That was nice and easy. Now we know how we can use the CSS in React. However, there's probably a way more interesting subject, which would be, can we use the JavaScript and JSX? Because probably that's going to make our React applications much more dynamic. And you probably already noticed so far that if I'm asking some kind of question in the beginning of the lecture, I'm probably providing the answer during the lecture. So the short answer would be yes. And since this will going to be our bread and butter, we might as well cover this right now. For this, what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to delete everything that we have worked on so far because there's no point for it. Our file is getting really clogged, as well as I'm going to comment out right now my index CSS. So in this case, we're not going to have our CSS, any background colors, anything like that. And I'm just going to delete everything here. And we're going to go back to a very basic example where we have some kind of component being returned or being rendered. However, in my case, I'm will going to rename this. And I'm going to say here person, as well as obviously we need to create this component. And again, we can use the ES6 or ES5. Let's just stick with ES5 for now. And let's just say person. Now, again, this is going to be the function. And then we're going to have some kind of return. Now in return, let's start very basic. Let's say that we're going to be looking for the section. And for this, again, I'm going to make my parentheses. You don't have to, but I'm going to say section. Within the section, I'm going to have the button. So let's use the HTML element, button element, as well as what else I would like. For now, let's write, I don't know, search button, search button. That's going to be the name, as well as we're going to have the heading 2 of, let's say, John Doe. John Doe, that's going to be my name. Once I save it, then I'm going to have my button as well as the heading 2, as well as, you know what, let's add some kind of info. So there's going to be a paragraph with a, let's say, some kind of text of info. Everything that we have done already so far should pretty much guide us here anyway. We already know how to do all this. What about if we start implementing a little bit more dynamic scenario where we're going to be having some kind of JavaScript in here? So how do we do this? Well, first and foremost, we, in general, in the component, in the function component, we'll always going to have to do this above the return. So don't write it over here. So don't say const and something like this here, because this is not going to make any sense within the JSX. So what you would need to do is above the return. Is this the only way how to do it? No, because we're going to be passing in as a props. We're going to be using the state component. So that's going to be a little bit different, meaning the class-based component. However, for the function stateless component, we were going to do this above the return. This is very, very important. So we're going to say over here const. So we're going to create some kind of variable because again, remember at the end of the day, this is a function, nothing less and nothing more. So here we're going to say button, and the button is going to have some kind of value. So let's say search button. And what we can do right now in JSX, if we would want to access this variable. So instead of having this plain static text, we need to write something similar that we did already with the styles. Remember, we had a style attribute and then we had the curly braces. But in that case, we had double curly braces. In this case, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say that there's going to be single one. And now within these single curly braces, I can access whatever variables I would like. You want to access the button? I can access the button. And now in this case, what do you see here? What does it say here in the button? Well, it says search button. We can also do it outside the function. We are not limited to that. Is there going to be cases where you're going to be mostly working with functions? Yeah, you're probably going to set up your variables here. Not always, but just letting you know that you will going to be working within the functions. However, here I can say const, and let's call this, I don't know, button text. So let's just change this around a little bit. Let's say button, and we're going to be looking for text. And what we can have as a text, I don't know, big button or something like this. So now instead of looking for the button text, we can just say button text. And in this case, I'm going to be getting my big button. So I would have some kind of text that is in the outside variable. And the way this works, again, like previously, whenever we work with JavaScript, if we have a function, if we want to access the variable, if the variable is within the function, we access it within the function. If it's outside, we can access it outside the function. The major idea here is that we are looking for this curly braces and then we're having our JavaScript within the curly braces. Let's also add maybe a few more variables. Let's say const, and then we're going to have the name variable. Name variable is going to be equal to John. Then we're going to copy and paste. And let's say that the second variable is going to be last name. I'm going to write last name, and that's going to be equal to Doe. And why don't we have it here within the heading too? And since this is JavaScript, we can do tons of things that we're doing just like JavaScript. So here, why don't we test it out with how we are actually concatenating the strings? Remember, that was one of the things that usually we learn the first thing in JavaScript. So I'm going to write here like this. I'm going to say name plus, then obviously, since I would want a space, I'm just going to have the empty quotation marks. Then again, another plus sign, and then we're going to be looking for the last name. Now, what do you think I'm going to have? Is this going to be the same old good old John Doe? Yes, it is. However, here I needed to add the space because that's why it didn't work. Again, now in this case, this is becoming dynamic. I can say here, not John, I can say Bob Doe. And now I'm going to have my Bob Doe. Then the same big button. Maybe this is going to be the small button. And so on and so forth. One thing that you do need to remember, though, that this needs to be an expression, meaning this needs to return a value. How do I can show you that? Well, let's imagine that there's going to be a paragraph. And within the paragraph, we can say something like this. So let's create another paragraph. And then let's write over here just a simple example of the statement. There's going to be let x is going to equal to the 6. You already can see this annoying little red squiggly bracket. So you understand that there is some kind of mistake. However, the moment I'm going to save it, note that this is going to directly show me that this is not what you can do. So there is some kind of error, meaning we do need to return something. This needs to be an expression. Now, first of all, let me comment this out just so you don't see this. And by the way, right away, as we're talking about commenting something out, the way that we use the comments in the JSX, the syntax would be like this, where we have the curly brackets, and within the curly brackets, again, we have /, then asterisk, and /. The quick way would be, again, within the Visual Studio Code, using the file, and then we're looking for somewhere there's going to be toggle comment. And then within the edit, we have the toggle comment. I'm using the short syntax, meaning I'm using the shortcut where I'm just pressing the command and /. And by the way, as we're still on a subject on the /, let me show you quickly something. So I'm going to head over back to my desktop. And then if we open up again, new Visual Studio Code, so I'm going to say new window. And then within the new window, we have the not tutorial, not recent, but we have the printable keyboard cheat sheet. And what's happening here is that, and this is not where I wanted to open, but anyway, this gives you all the shortcuts. So this is what I'm talking about throughout tutorial, where I tell you like, okay, so if you want to select 2 tags, you're going to have to press Command D. And overall, this really is going to speed up your development. I don't think you have to sit down and memorize this for a month, but there's going to be cases where this is becoming really useful. So this is going to become part of your muscle memory. So let's say you want to comment, you're not heading each and every time to a toggle comment. Instead, you remember, okay, so if I wanted to have a comment, whether this is, by the way, going to be in the CSS or in the HTML. However, obviously, since this is a JSX, as I'm adding the comment, this is going to be the common syntax for the, let's say, JSX. If I'm going to head over here to index CSS, if I'm going to add the comment, notice this is going to be the typical syntax for the CSS. I'm digressing a little bit, but this is very important because knowing these shortcuts is really going to help you. And again, the way you can print them out is you can just open up the welcoming screen again in the Visual Studio Code, and that way you can access it and print it out if you want. Again, I did digress a little bit, but since I was covering the comments and since I have been using already a few of the shortcuts, I think it's kind of important to show you why I'm using them, why this is useful, and where you can find all the shortcuts that you can use in the Visual Studio Code. Last but not least, we know that we cannot use the statements, meaning we do need to use the expressions. So let me maybe show you also how we can use the template literals, since that is also something that we're going to use quite a lot. And this is how we can do it here. So let me comment this out. So there's going to be a bunch of comments, I guess, in this video or in this lecture. And let me write another heading too, just so you can have both of them side by side. I know I can access right now my JavaScript within my JSX. And here I can say that since I know how to use the template literals, and by the way, template literal is the left key, the tilde character from the one key on the keyboard. And you notice you're going to get these little template literals instead of quotation marks. And here, if we know the ES6, we can access the variables. In our case, the variables could be the button text, the button, doesn't really matter. So in this case, I'm going to say name. So I'm going to be accessing the name, as well as I'm going to be accessing, let's say, last name. And the moment we save it, again, we get Bob Doe. You don't believe me? We can do Peter Doe, and we're still going to be accessing them. So we are allowed to do this. Probably last, we can do a simple math if we want, because again, this is going to be JavaScript. So let me comment this. And for the paragraph, instead of info, I'm going to write, I don't know, 12 plus 35. And what do you think I'm going to be getting here? The result is going to be 47. Again, as long as we're having here the expression that returns something, that is allowed. If you're going to be writing here, for example, statement that doesn't return anything, this is not allowed, and this is going to spit you an error and break your application.